Perfect.
Yeah.
Such good advice.
I think we always kind of stress that, like, you need to talk to your lender and get pre-approved. It's just,
Yeah.
people just don't.
Yeah.
I actually had somebody today. They're like, well, I actually think that I'm going to buy a car first and then I'm going to buy a house. I'm like,
no.
Okay, well.
Yeah.
I mean, if you need a ride, you have to get around to those
Well,
houses.
she was just like, I just want a new car. And I'm like, okay, well, you should wait till you buy a house first.
Yeah. Yeah. And the biggest thing, I think a lot of people get afraid to talk to their lender because they think their lender is just like, well, if you're going to do that, we're going to deny you, right? So at the end of the day, what we're here for is to help guide you through the whole process and explain to you what exactly the best way to get to the finish line is, the fastest, less stressful way to get there. So don't be afraid to talk to us. You know, if you have questions, no question is a stupid question, and just be honest with us and we'll coach you through it. Like, I kind of like to say we're doctors in a sense. People are embarrassed to talk to doctors because of certain things. But at the end of the day, the doctor's there to help you and resolve whatever issues that you have. So it's always smart to talk to us about those same things.
Well, and along those lines too, everything comes out. I mean, it's not like if you don't, just be honest about whatever, because you're going to see it at some point, whatever that might be. Like, you can't hide a bank account. You can't, hide debt. You can't hide money coming in.
You can't hide secret payments that you're making to somebody.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes out in the wash. So, it's just best to get that advice ahead of time. But yeah, I just thought this was important because, again, like, so many people have side businesses doing this kind of thing and maybe aren't thinking about that in terms of how their business or payments or borrowing money, giving money would affect that.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and there's always ways around certain things, right? So, I mean, and that's where it's always good to jump out ahead of it and get an idea of what the situation is, so we can figure out a way to resolve it, right? So there's always ways, and it's just you want to get out ahead of it way before your offer's accepted and the ball's rolling and you got to close in 20, 30 days. That's when stuff can pop up. So.
Yeah, and you would hate for something to come up 3 days before you're supposed to close.
I hate that.
It happens. It happens.
It happens. It does happen for sure. Yeah, but I mean, the biggest thing is, like, it just depends. Each situation is going to be a little bit different as far as, the Venmo, the cash and stuff like that. I've had clients that, would randomly get, like, Amanda, to your point, their roommate would pay utilities, and that's acceptable, because typically it's like $200, $300 or something like that. So it's not $1,000 deposit. It's not a $2,000 deposit. When you get high up in those large deposits, that's when the red flags get drawn.
Yeah, like perhaps if they were paying an entire year's worth of utilities too in one payment.
Yes.
Yeah, I was kind of more wondering, like, if if it matters if things are labeled, if you're not labeling payments, then how do you source it?
Like, if you can see what the payment is for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even if, for instance, on the subject, so like if it's a PayPal or a Venmo, it'll specifically say PayPal or Venmo on the deposit.
Does it say what it is?
So you don't have to go in and source the Venmo, like the money that you're bringing in from Venmo. Like, you don't have to look at it. If it's a large deposit. Oh.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. So say you have other payments coming in that aren't for your business. So how do you decipher if they're not labeled, who paid you for what thing? Does that make sense? Say you have a $3,000 deposit from Venmo every single month, but all of those deposits are including utilities from roommates. You went out to eat with a friend and they paid you, and then your business as well. So you're depositing all that money into your account. Like, obviously you can't use like utility payments and things like that towards a mortgage. So are you having to go in and source those? And if they're not labeled properly, how is that working?
Well, so they're mostly labeled, right? So they're going to see what the source is. But even if it is labeled, like, say, for instance, it's PayPal, say it says Fidelity. Anything that is a large deposit again, based on the loan amount, based on the loan type, anything that is considered a large deposit, even if it is labeled, even if it says One Main Financial, and it's a large deposit, even if it says PayPal and it's a large deposit, I still need to source it, right? Because if it says PayPal $2,000, I need to see where that came from.
I understand that. I guess the disconnect is, you know how we label what we're paying people for, right?
Yeah.
So if it's not labeled correctly by the person that is paying you, so someone's paying me for multiple different things every month, you know, it could be for my business, it could be for dinner, it could be for, so if it's not labeled, then how can you source it?
I think, do you see,
So
but you don't see what the payment is. You just see where it came from. So you would just see, you know, a $3,000 deposit from PayPal, say, right? Like you wouldn't see that $3,000 includes this, right?
No, you're saying just one big deposit, Amanda, or a bunch of different ones?
I don't know what I'm not, like, I can't figure out like what I'm not explaining right, I guess. Like, I'm just thinking like if I have 10 deposits in my Venmo account and half of them are for business, half of them are for, because I went out to dinner with friends.
So you got a slice of pizza picture, you've got a beer picture.
So you're taking all the money that's just sitting in your Venmo account over the last month and just making one large deposit into your Venmo, into your checking account. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, so it doesn't matter if it's labeled. So like if they just make one large deposit, say $5,000, and some of it was because of pizza, some of it was because of this. Yeah, so that'd be tough, actually. I've never ran into that situation.
Always something new.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pizza.
Yeah, that's a lot of pizza.
It's mixed, you know, like you're like, okay, well, I deposit my money every 2 weeks, and some could be for pizza and some could be for utilities, and then some's for my business.
Right.
So, you know, you're using pizza money to pay for a house, right? So it's kind of like, how do you decipher that? So I would think that may come back if it's not labeled properly.
Well, you can actually go into like Venmo or PayPal. You can actually source transactions, right? You can actually print out a transaction history of Venmo. So it's almost like a bank account in a sense, right? So if one was for pizza, one was for whiskey, if the other one was whatever it may be, right?
My favorite
that's
things.
fine. Yeah, they're not large deposits, and they're just $50 here, $20 there. If it was for a business, then we would have to understand what that business is, right? So like,
so it does need to be labeled.
You better be using the right emoji.
Yeah. But typically, though, like for businesses, you have bills of sale. You know what I mean? So if you have a bill of sale or an invoice or something like that, you would need to show that. Because if my business is, again, I'll bring up the example of a food truck, right? You have receipts, you have invoices, you have bills of sale, and that's how you source those large deposits in a Venmo account. They're not really going to question, like, a pizza deposit or, a whiskey deposit, because it's such minuscule amounts, but it's the large deposits they're going to see. So as long as it makes sense, right? So we're not out there to sit there, we're the evil lender, we're to deny people, right? So we just have to make sense of everything. So if you're self-employed and we have a history of self-employment and we have a history of you using cash as your self-employment, if it's a hobby, the food truck or personal trainer or something like that, then we can use that as income. We just have to make sense of it.
Yeah. Whereas,
does that answer your question? Yeah.
Somewhat. I mean, I think that it is important that from what you're saying, it sounds like it is important that it's labeled correctly.
Because the thing is too, if you have a W-2 job, like you have a regular job, but then you're getting all these big money deposits from your side gig, whatever that is, then that's where you're going to be like, well, what is this? And, because someone's not going to deposit necessarily $3,000 into your account and you have pizza and whiskey and stuff taken from that deposit, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
kind of because that's not your income.
No.
Right. Well, so there's two different things we're talking about here, though, because like income is income, large deposits is assets, right? So like if you're a W-2 employee, and that's what we're going to qualify you for income, right? So like if I work at Amazon and I get $3,000 a month W-2 income on my pay stub every single month,
right?
Well, then obviously we can source all that into an account. Now, if I also work at Amazon, but I'm also a personal trainer on the side, and I don't have a business license, and I don't have any, I've been doing it for maybe 6 months. Yeah. Well, even if you've only been doing it for 6 months and whatnot, you have to have like some kind of invoice receipt or something like that so we can use that as an asset. So it's not necessarily going to be your income that we're going to use to qualify. We just need to know that that money was from something that's legitimate. The biggest thing why we question large deposits is because we don't want to see a large deposit from another lender. Example, One Main Financial is a subprime personal loan company, right? So if you go out and take out a loan to put into your account to get another loan, that's what we try to avoid. Does that make sense?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
does using Venmo, PayPal, these things, and I don't know why it would, but that doesn't affect your credit score by any means, does it? Like that doesn't, like if you're making payments or collecting money or.
No. I mean, I've never ran into anybody that like, I get what you're saying, Amanda, like, because you're just like, you're building up that huge balance in Venmo, and then all of a sudden you just plop that into your checking account.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So I've never ran into that. It's a very good question. So it would just be, we would have to print out. Yeah. So we would definitely have.
He's a thinker, that one.
The real producer right there. Yeah.
That's what I say.
Yeah.
She is.
Well, yeah. So it just really, what it boils down to is just sourcing it right, you know? So, I mean, it's not necessarily like the labeling in Venmo itself. It's just, you know, if there's a $50 there, $20 there, $30 there, that's fine. No big deal. But when we see that $4,000 deposit, whoa, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
And typically, if your side hustle is personal training or something like that, you should have a bill of sale or a receipt or something like that.
Okay.
Or like if you sold a car and someone Venmo'd you from the sale of the car, right?
So you have to back up these Venmo, PayPal. You have to back it up with some type of receipt.
Yes.
So it does count.
Yeah, like a
essentially.
If it's a business.
Yeah.
Not if it's like pizza and whiskey money.
Well, right. Well, you're not using it to buy a house.
I'm going to send you a receipt for the whiskey I bought you.
Yeah, that's a lot of deposits over the years to add up to buy a house, right?
Yeah, it would really, or not.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it was just, you just have to see if it's a large deposit, even if it goes into your Venmo account. So what you're doing is you're depositing a large deposit into Venmo, and then Venmo's going into your checking. Yeah. So you got to see where it comes from. And like if you're selling a car, you need to see the title transfer. So it makes sense for everything. So it's just all about making sense. Yeah.
Track it. Know where it comes from.
Track it.
Talk to your lender.
Yeah.
Talk to your lender.
So I think we've pretty well covered.
Exhausted it.
As always, if anyone has any questions, Rob is tagged, or you can just post in the comments and we'll get it over to him. I do have off topic. Sarah Rates has asked, is it better? Yeah, right.
When are we going to Cincinnati?
Whenever. Yes. Okay. So that will be another topic, but I keep telling her to call you, Rob, and I just haven't given her your information because she wants to buy a house once she is going to the PhD program. So here is her question. Is it better to have 2 lines of